Hello, my name is Philip Campbell. I am a Bio 282 student and I am under my TA, Hunter Kleinschmidt. And today will be presenting to you how accurate is media accurate. As we know today, social media and the media is very prevalent in getting not social information, but information from point A to point B. And is portrayed through all types of life, such as science, education, entertainment, but in reference to sciences, it's easy to get sources and information mixed up when it goes from translation from science labs and science experiments and science projects to articles that maybe not be so scientific, or just regular articles that are trying to display scientific information. So today we'll have two sources with us today, and they're both about COVID-19. We have went through a global pandemic, so I thought this would be prevalent to the topic in the course. We've also done many of COVID assignments. So the two articles I will be comparing today, or the article in the primary literature, is Coronavirus Reinfections Are Rare. Danish researchers report an assessment of protection against reinfection with SARS-CoV-2 amongst 4 million PCR test individuals in Denmark in 2020, a population level observational study. So the first slide is the goals of the media source. The media source, which is coronavirus and reinfections are rare, Danish reporters report, was a article in I think it was the Landslet, yes. And it was it was explaining basically what was in the primary literature about reinfections, and how if you have had COVID or have had a COVID vaccination, it is a lot harder or a lot rarer for you to have a reinfection of COVID-19. And if you do likely have a reinfection, it is likely to be more asymptomatic comparative to the first very heavy symptom, all the symptoms of the COVID-19 infection. This article really focused on a portion of the literature, the primary literature, that it wasn't really about. It focused on how it was a statement that elderly people or people over the age of 65 are more prone to be affected by COVID-19 again, because of lowered immune system and things that come with being older in age. So the protection for older people goes from 80% in younger people to 40% in older people. That was the goal of the media source, but to let you know that the chances of reinfection are very low. Yes, the starter information. I took this quote from the primary literature. The presence or absence of protective immunity after infection with or without vaccination will affect transmission of the virus and severity of illness. So basically what that's saying is, if you already have an immune response to COVID-19, it will affect the severity of the illness, which will likely, since the immune system is already used to COVID-19 or any infection, it will respond quicker, which will cause for a less severe reaction or a less severe illness or infection, and the transmission of the virus. So maybe if you have experience with it, immune system wise, you will have a lesser chance or a higher chance of being able to avoid COVID-19. Like, your immune system will respond quicker and there will be less chance of an infection. In the absence, this is the absence of COVID-19 markers and immunity and immune system, everything was the main reason for the rapid spread of the pandemic, because this was a new virus. It was something that we didn't have an immune system towards up to now. So that's what it's stating. And this was the starting information going into the experiment, because we're about to get into the primary literature. The goals of the primary literature, the main goal was to find the amount of protection that is provided against COVID-19 if you already have an encounter with COVID-19. This took place in Denmark and had access to extensive COVID testing. This is had 4 million individuals used, and about 69% of the population were used in this experiment. So the frame of the results, there were two surges that were used. There was the initial surge, and then there was the surge that happened later in life, or later down the line. So the first surge was before June 1st. This was like basically the start of the pandemic. And the second surge was from September 1st to the end of 2020. And if there was a positive or negative PCR test from the first surge or the second surge, it was noted during those spikes. Now, there were some exclusions for this experiment. If you tested positive in between Surge 1 and Surge 2, you were excluded. And if you died before September 1st by any causes, you were also excluded from this. So this is the, let me move this camera. Yeah. This is the first results of it. This is the graph, the graph of these surges. The first surge can be indicated by this first little dotted line, and the section before that, this middle section is the grace period, or the period at which it was not recorded, and then here is the second surge. The first surge, this top graph is incidents per 100,000 people, and then the blue graph, or the graph under it, is the test rate per 100,000 people. Now, the incidence per 100,000 people, or the population, it was lower in the beginning, and as well as testing rates, because it was the beginning of the pandemic. And as the pandemic began to continue, you can see test rates had increased drastically over the time between Surge 1 and into Surge 2. Test rate has increased drastically, and also the incidence rate at which COVID was happening was much higher in the second surge comparative to the first surge. Now, this is the information. Let me move it again. Sorry. This is the second graph that was there. This is the tests that were taken during the surges. So this first line is talking about positive during the first surge and negative during the first surge. So there was 11,000 people that came up positive and during the first surge, and there were 72 people that were confirmed a new infection during the follow-up. So this graph is basically, or this chart, this would be either graph or a chart, whichever one. This is showing the comparison between infection rate throughout the first, and then the incidence rate of it occurring again. So if you got you got infected the first time around, and then you went back and got retested, you would see the difference between point A and point B. And it's a common trend among this graph, that among this entire graph, is that once you have COVID-19, the chances of you reobtaining it or being reinfected is drastically lower than the original number. And that's what this graph is trying to state. It's trying to say, in the lack of better terms, or just a little sum down skim version of it, it's showing that it's lesser, yes. And so the next question, I'm pulling myself back up, was this article accurate? Yes, this article, I do believe this article was very accurate when it came to portraying the information. However, the only critique I had for this was the fact that this article took the experiment and kind of put that into two sentences and then focused on another common theme, which wasn't wrong, but yes, this article was accurate. However, the common theme of this project, this presentation, is the fact that you must be careful when dealing with scientific articles that are then took into media articles, because there can be misinformation. There's been a lot of misinformation due in the pandemic, like 5G, and mis-theories and all the stuff like that. So just make sure when you are looking at this or looking at information, that you make sure it's accurate and comes from an accurate source. And these are the sources I use. These are the two articles, Assessment of Protection, and the media source that I use. Thank you.